Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. Yes, right? Double checking. 25, isn't it? Okay. It feels like 26. I don't know. You tell me what's going on here. All right, good morning. Time to start another show. We have a Wednesday program all planned out for you. That is to say, news happened. We have become aware of some small percentage of it, and we will present it to you with our own views of how ridiculous it is. That's the show. So we've got a good summary. That's a good AI summary of what we do here. And Greg Dworkin is here with us because it is a Wednesday, and he's compiled a number of fun things for us to catch up on. As you know, Jeffrey Epstein back in the news, as everybody has to, I guess now, you're more or less forced to thumb through at least some of his 50th birthday book. And remember, I think we discovered somewhere along the way that there are multiple birthday books. I'm not certain that it was always a milestone birthday that was being celebrated this way, but the one that everybody is interested in is the one that Donald Trump inserted his entry into, although he now denies it. Although everyone should be reminded that he also tried for a short period of time, a very short, very brief period of time, 2 weeks, to deny that it was him in the Access Hollywood video. You remember that? So, I mean, that's not beyond the pale for him. He's, of course, portrayed January 6th as a great patriotic event, and all the people who have participated in it are heroes. So I guess it's small potatoes in a way for him to try to recast his, his hot mic moment as, I think was trying to say once he realized or heard through the grapevine that now AI can fake your voice. Yeah, well, they did that to me 10 years before they invented the AI technology that could have done that, of course. And now he's got his legions of fans out there saying that's not Donald Trump's amazingly recognizable and stunningly stupid-looking signature on that page. And, of course, there was, I guess, right in the beginning of this saga, I've never drawn a picture in my life. And then, of course, everybody showing all the pictures that he's been drawing all over the place. So, par for the course, I guess, for him. Which is a golf term and something that he'll understand, obviously. And then, let's see, last night he went out to a restaurant, made a big journey outside the White House, as the Washington Post has put it. He journeyed outside the White House, a rare journey outside for dining out. Now, he used to only dine out at the Trump Hotel down the street because, moving from from the White House, which he considered to be a Trump property, now more so than ever, to the Trump Hotel, but that's gone now. I don't know how they selected this particular place, but anyway, they went out for dinner last night, and for whatever reason, the papers are casting it as a big journey. It's literally a couple hundred feet from the White House. It's on 15th Street Northwest, and as you know, if you know anything about the layout of Washington, D.C., the White House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, that would be the intersection of 16th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. And he went to dinner at the intersection of 15th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue, basically. So, I don't know. And they went in a limo, too, which is also kind of amazing. So the big journey out was interrupted by protesters, apparently. And he wanted to he did have everybody thrown out. They were shouting out a number of things that they were protesting about. There's no limit. But also very interesting, pointed out he was out to dinner with the cabinet, which I thought was interesting, and I'll have to look it up and see who made the comment, but I thought it was an interesting one, that it's weird, and as he said, a little bit sad, I guess, if you're this kind of person that might feel empathy for Donald Trump, that Trump sort of requires, as Peter Segal, who had said this, it's genuinely weird and a little sad how the president requires his most senior cabinet officials and the vice president to also be his friends. Come on, we're going out to dinner. And he took them all out to dinner like it's a club. We meet and he surrounds himself with his most accomplished yes men and yes people who go to cabinet meetings and tell him how awesome he is. Come to dinner and tell me how awesome it is. Oh, everything involves a meal, of course. All right. Well, before we get too far into things, it is Wednesday, and Greg Dworkin is here, and he's got a large collection of stories to share with us. And that means we have to think about whether. Well, we'll go with one of your favorites. Oh, where's the one we requested the other day? All right, I gotta go find and punch the right button. There we are.
There we go.
Fractured Fairy Tales.
Fractured Fairy Tales, one of my favorites.
It's a little longer than most, but...
Yeah, but better than most.
You know.
I mean, don't you want to dance on your toes?
There we are. Hey, good morning, Greg Dworkin. How you doing?
Good morning. So I have a slightly different take on the Trump dinner.
Oh, yeah? Okay, good.
I think it's completely and totally business, totally understandable.
Okay.
Fascist Trump took over Washington, D.C. police force and then sort of relinquished the police force, but still has the National Guard there doing KP duty and picking up garbage.
Yes.
People were scared by the military presence. Nobody wanted to go out. Restaurant traffic was down. Trump wants to prove to the world that his intervention has made it safe to eat in Washington, D.C., and to me, that was the purpose of the stupid dinner.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes a certain amount of sense. It is, and I guess, so you drag the cabinet along because it's a photo op dinner.
Exactly.
So
I don't even know if they ate anything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, there's no chance that Trump went somewhere.
He may have gone to a restaurant and then had hamburgers brought in from McDonald's.
Yeah, that could certainly be the case. There's no chance that Trump went to a place with a table and didn't have food put on it. He's Mr.
But it may
Meal
not be
with
that,
everything. Right.
And for whatever reason, people bow to him and let him do things like that. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, you want to come to our restaurant? Sure, we'll let you in.
Yeah.
Why?
I am not sure about that.
You're probably not going to pay the bill with your history.
That's true, and I think so. He had most people thrown out of there. I think because he was in close proximity to the White House, that'll always leave you in close proximity to dedicated, more or less professional protesters. So, yeah, they went and yelled at him, and he got very upset, and he's very agitated and yelling for people to be thrown out. The whole thing was a little bit weird.
Now we got to air out the whole dining room. It smells funny.
Yeah, but speaking of his talking about, people are afraid to go out. Of course, he insisted that during the occupation of the city by the National Guard and his personal control of the police force there, that now it was safe and everybody is going out. But of course, the restaurants were empty, which is how you can say on a moment's notice, I'm going to Joe's Seafood, Prime Steak, and Stone Crab. That's apparently the place they went. Empty it out.
Which is a Miami-based restaurant. He also had a Florida theme.
I see. And odds are then that the ownership are Pervalago members as well.
Yeah,
there's no reason he wouldn't go to just any random restaurant.
Let's just put it that way.
Right. So, but he also, I guess he made a claim to the press that, the reason we were so worried and scared about these protesters, and one of the reasons I brought in the National Guard is it was very common. He would say, it was very common people would go out to dinner in Washington, D.C., and robbers would just invade the restaurant in the middle of dinner and rob and mug everybody. But now it's safe and that doesn't happen anymore. Of course, he was just assailed in the restaurant, which I guess means it does actually happen to him. But no, just like most American cities or indeed cities around the world, the idea of dinnertime banditry, a new invention, not something that's actually happening in D.C. or anywhere else. But
wait,
that's the story he has to tell.
Did he bring Kristi Noem with him?
I don't know.
Like everybody's safe around Kristi Noem.
Right.
Her bag only gets stolen every once in a while.
Right. It's like lightning doesn't strike twice. So I don't see her in any of the pictures. So she must be either away on a junket or Corey Lewandowski came over for dinner. I don't know.
Yeah, she's shacking up with another Trump aide.
Yeah, she couldn't get off of the naval base to make it across the cities. But yeah, it's literally feet away from the White House. If you remember the place, the St. John's Episcopal Church where he did the upside down Bible photo op, that is, mere feet from the front door of this restaurant. So the big journey out in limos, paid for by all of us, of course. Just, it wasn't like he was venturing out into the wilds. And if that area was ever in need of patrol by armed forces, then you really would have a problem. But of course, no. It's about the safest part of any city you can think of because of the massive presence of federal law enforcement.
Right. So I do need to warn David and the listening audience that we're doing some renovations here at Casa Dworkin. My master bathroom is losing the tub and gaining a walk-in shower. So as we age, we don't trip and fall all over the place and break things.
I see
but they are breaking things upstairs, so you may hear it.
I see.
And it's also Wednesday when the lawn people come, and we're also having
outside.
the air conditioning people over, and they should be coming while I'm in the middle of my segment. So there may be some noise, but
that's okay.
I just thought I'd mention it. Abby seems to have adjusted to all of this.
Good. That's good news.
Which is to say she's outside, so you can't hear her.
Okay. Are you going to be gluing any gold doodads to the wall?
You know, it occurred to me as I was redoing the bathroom, maybe what I should do is give Melania a call and see if she had any advice on the modeling. And she suggested gold leaf for the walls and Krugerrands for the floor of the shower because they're small gold and give a good grip to your feet. So we said no, we're not doing that. But,
all right, well,
that was an idea.
The opportunity, she could go the Christmas route too and just have a giant cauldron of blood or whatever it is.
Well, we could do the Karen thing. We could have the tile guy midway through what we did pick and then say, no, we want Krugerrands and have him rip everything out and redo it.
Right, and then not paying because you got it wrong. Okay. Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully there won't be too much interruption from the.
This is going to be for the next 3 weeks, so just off and on you'll hear noise. That's just the way it works.
I'll make some noise here so you don't feel bad.
Right. So let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein. My pundit roundup this morning led off with Trump and Epstein, that famous picture of them palling around. Yeah. Which is on the side of bus stops everywhere. And my caption was, if I get a milk carton big enough, I'll put it there too. So, maybe you can go find these guys.
Okay.
But this my leadoff story was from the Japan news.
Oh. All right. Why?
Democrats in the U.S. House of Representatives on Monday made public a birthday letter Donald Trump allegedly wrote to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The alleged Donald Trump allegedly wrote this alleged sex offender more than 20 years. He's not alleged, he's convicted. The White House quickly denied its authenticity. The letter, the existence of which was reported by the Wall Street Journal, appears to have been signed by Trump, which he has denied and says it doesn't exist. Right. The letter, which the House of Representatives released, does not exist, but they released it anyway, in other words.
Yeah. It's fake computer, fake news.
Right. It was actually released by the Democrats in the House Oversight Committee. But my point is, Japan news, this is worldwide interest. People are following this. And Trump's efforts to make it go away aren't working all that well. I'm just saying.
All right. Even in Japan, they have seen the news.
Yeah, even in Japan.
Now the Japanese prime minister will vomit on our president as a change of pace.
That would be a good idea. This is the New York Times.
Yes.
Latest revelations complicate Trump's sweeping denials about Epstein. President Trump often succeeds in pivoting the national conversation. In other words, we're so stupid we often fall for this, but in this particular case, it's worth clicks, so no, we're not.
Right. Sure.
That's what that headline means.
Yeah, okay.
But he is finding that more difficult when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, which is to say, we'd like to help him out, but clicks, we can't. I mean, this is like really interesting stuff. So with the vast powers of the presidency at his disposal, he often succeeds in pivoting the national conversation to focus on political terrain he finds more favorable, like immigration or crime. He's underwater on these things, folks. He's unpopular. What the hell is wrong with the New York Times? I don't know.
Well,
they never get it right.
Pedophilia.
But I'm just saying.
Yes.
And so perhaps instead of looking at the New York Times for advice, let's go to a much more reliable source, The Onion. This headline just summarizes it all. Trump claims he can't be expected to remember every birthday card he sends to child molesters. And that's absolutely what's going on here. stressing that it was unrealistic to think he would recollect one such letter out of the vast number he's written in his lifetime. Trump told reporters Tuesday he shouldn't be expected to remember every single birthday card he sent to child molesters. Every month I'm probably sending off a dozen or so, said Trump, insisting that given the hundreds of such dispatches, the child molesters' names and the details of their orgies often blur together in his mind. It's just a formality. I want to express a little gratitude for a nice party, that's all.
Yeah. Right.
So I think that's exactly what happened, and I think they got it right. Now, I have a clip for you to play, provided by Huffington Post, or at least pointing to the YouTube version of our old friend Jim Jordan.
Okay. Oh, it comes via... All right. Well, I've got it on YouTube, as you pointed out.
Well, play the tape.
You got it. All right.
Let's go to the tape.
There he is. Who's interviewing him here? I recognize that guy. We'll find out.
Manu Raju, maybe?
That may be him. Yeah, I'm not great with the faces, but I do recognize him.
I don't know if that's legit, and I haven't seen it. I'll take a look at it.
Don't you want to learn more about Trump's relationship and friendship with Epstein?
No, I want to have Director Patel in next week, where we'll ask him about all kinds of things. I haven't seen it. Don't buy it.
Oh, okay. So it's I didn't see the tweet excuse.
And even if I did, I still can't see it. So Stephen Colbert, according to the Huffington Post, which wrote the story, Colbert rolled a clip of House Judiciary Committee Jim Jordan earlier in the day saying, I haven't seen it, don't buy it. Colbert fired back with a biting reminder from Jordan's past. If Jim Jordan didn't see it, it didn't happen, especially not in the showers of Ohio State. And then he said to his audience, Google it.
Yeah.
And for those of you who were just born yesterday, Jim Jordan, former assistant wrestling coach at Ohio State University, has been accused of ignoring molestation allegations against the team's doctor. Jordan has denied the accusations, which have been corroborated by several witnesses.
Yeah, and I mean, I think our audience knows it, but in case there's anybody new or who has missed the story, just by way of clarification, ignoring allegations of abuse by the team doctor, it wasn't so much like, hey, have you heard about the team doctor? Yeah. It was his wrestlers coming to him saying, Coach, I'm on the verge of quitting this team. The doctor is constantly molesting me in the shower. You got to do something. Well, he's not doing that. No, that's just Doc.
You're being overdramatic here.
He had the complaints made directly to him, and he said, get out of here. You know, the doctor's not doing that. I don't believe you. So, great guy.
Right. All right. Let's do some international stuff.
All right.
Because there's a lot happening.
Donald Trump ate a meal internationally.
Russia sends drones into Poland, which shoots them down.
Yes.
That's kind of a big deal because Poland's a NATO member, so I just mentioned that. We don't know what the fallout of that's going to be.
One drone.
Nepal. You hear about Nepal?
No, it sounds like a comedy routine of some kind. Hey, how about those?
Have you ever heard about Nepal?
Yeah,
Nepal
no, why are they in the news?
It's a Himalayan country.
I love that pronunciation.
And it happens to be run by elite, rich people. And let's just read you the Washington Post story.
That is the
Nepal's
way of the world.
prime minister resigns and parliament burns amid deadly protests. Anger had been mounting for years against the Nepali political elite, viewed as corrupt and out of touch. They're communists and are pro-China, which is a good idea in that part of the world. If you don't want to get killed.
I see what they mean. Right, okay. So elitist communists.
So elitist, communists have their elite. They have the Politburo. They have the the ruling bureaucrats. But in any case, Tuesday it exploded with sudden ferocity. You see, younger people in Nepal, and this may come as a surprise to Americans, are often on the internet and use social media.
How can
Did you ever
that
hear
happen?
such a thing?
No, I thought they were all monks and lived on the mountaintops.
So in order to describe what's going on in Nepal with the ruling elite, they had been using these things called hashtags, like Nepo baby stuff.
But
it was really annoying the elite. So the elite decided the best way to handle this is to ban the internet.
Well, that's always popular. Okay.
Well, it was not popular. As it turns out, a lot of people started to protest, and this was the spark that triggered the conflagration. Nepal's prime minister resigned Tuesday after a deadly crackdown on anti-corruption protests, and young demonstrators set fire to government buildings and the homes of
Oh,
senior
real fire.
politicians, plunging the
Oh.
small Himalayan nation into chaos. 19 people were killed by security forces.
Ooh.
They took to the streets to protest a government ban on social media apps, including WhatsApp and Instagram. Authorities swiftly reversed the ban and ordered a curfew. But as crowds swelled Tuesday, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli announced he was stepping down, called for a constitutional resolution, but by nightfall, key parts of the capital were in flames, including the parliament, Supreme Court, and the building of the country's main media organization. So, I understand why Trump doesn't want to shut down TikTok.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm just saying.
I was confused by Nepo baby and the fact that this was happening in Nepal. Not a Nepali baby, it's Nepo baby. Yeah, right. There's two different kinds going on. Well, I blame this on the worldwide sensation caused by their native dumpling dish, the momos, catching on as a trendy dish in America.
There's more. Balendra Shah is the mayor of Kathmandu.
All right.
And the protesters are hopeful they can make Shah become the next prime minister. Now, this is protest primarily driven by young people. And the 35-year-old mayor, says the Post, a rapper turned politician, has emerged as one of the few figures in Nepal's aging political establishment to openly back the protests. He said he can't join the protests because he's not Gen Z. But he urged the country's leader to heed their grievances. And when the prime minister stepped down, Shah posted, "Dear Gen Z, your murderer has resigned." So the protesters like him. And one of the things that people need to appreciate is that there's not a lot of work in Nepal.
Okay.
So a lot of Nepalis leave the country, go to surrounding countries, get jobs.
How we got the momos.
There's a whole network, communication, contacts, which are done over social media to steer people to these jobs and get money back into Nepal. So when you shut down social media, you're shutting that down too, which is essentially shutting down the underground economy, which is one of the reasons why people were so upset by it.
Yeah, it's probably not
unusual.
And
that's what happened, just so you know.
Yeah, interesting twist that I didn't know about, but yeah, it's probably actually quite common for things to work that way. So it makes it so easy to communicate both locally and internationally, so sure. Wow. Well, very interesting. It's possible also this all could be caused by their oddly shaped flag.
Well, Nepal. I'm just saying, there's lessons to be learned everywhere.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Flags.
You got to pay attention to what's going on there and elsewhere, and the dangers of trying to shut down social media, I guess.
Yeah, don't take away things from people when they depend on them.
And particularly when they haven't got much to begin with.
Message to Republicans.
Okay.
Israel threatens enemies everywhere after strike against Hamas in Qatar. Yes. That's a weird one.
It is.
They say they killed Hamas leaders. Hamas said, no, it was just a flesh wound. You didn't hurt anybody. You killed a kid of somebody who you were trying to get, but you didn't really get anybody that's
absolutely be
top of our list.
Okay.
Israel says they'll go anywhere against anybody. Many people around the world and in the United States figure that what Netanyahu is really saying is that I'll start a new war if the old war is over and you're trying to get me out of power because I'm the war president and I have to be here until the war is done, and I'll just make sure the war is never done.
Yeah, that seems to be the strategy there. And as I understood, they were targeting Hamas leadership. Well, I guess Hamas leadership has sort of always been kind of camping out in Qatar, but
Qatar
they also
prides
are
itself as being like the Switzerland of the Middle East.
They're purportedly are there for any negotiations of any kind. And so, I mean, I guess what ends up happening is they were targeting people who were ostensibly peace negotiators, or any kind of negotiating.
Well, that would end the war.
And so we can't have that.
So you can't have that.
But yeah, it's an awful insult to Qatar. Of course, I'm not certain that Netanyahu cares about Qatar, but I did see people pointing out that this would have had to have happened with consultation with the United States, and they're probably
Which claims that
bummed
they were
about.
only notified when the missiles were in
Yeah.
the air, too late to do anything about it.
Oh
and that they're
well.
not happy.
Besides
well.
which, I already have the $400 million free
I'll
jet.
send Netanyahu a sternly worded letter.
Yeah. All right. So you didn't buy safety from Israeli strikes by giving away the plane, although it was never their plan to give away the plane anyway. They just got pressured into it. What can you do if you don't stand strong?
What
you're gonna
UAE does
come
and
out
what
like a
Qatar
loser.
does all blends together in my head, so it's hard to keep track. But I will tell you
Yeah.
that it has ramifications. So I'll start talking about this. Perhaps we'll finish up with the link after the
All right.
break. But this one's about domestic politics, and I do want to get to that Virginia 11 special. Maybe I'll do
we
that,
won.
and we'll talk about Zohar Mamdani after the break.
Oh, okay.
So in Virginia, Jerry Connolly had the misfortune of leaving office early because he's dead.
Right.
These things happen.
Unscheduled departure.
And there was a race, and the race was won by the Democrat James Walkinshaw, who was Connolly's chief of staff or office manager or something. But he used to work for Connolly
Coffee
in some
boy.
capacity.
Yes.
Walkinshaw's headed to Congress having won about 75% of the vote, which is interesting because Connolly generally won 2-1, Harris won 2-1. This is yet another overperformance in a special election by a Democrat.
Yeah.
And
really
he's coming to Congress at an interesting time. He called Mike Johnson. Who, I don't know if he answered his call. Johnson may have been too busy saying that he didn't know anything about the Trump letter.
Maybe he was at the restaurant.
To Jeffrey Epstein. But he said, I would like to be sworn in tomorrow if I can. You've done that for other people. Do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that goes and what the protocol is. But what WAMU radio station?
Yes. Right.
Or TV station?
Yep.
Says,
radio, I believe.
He'll arrive in Congress a few weeks before funding, and he's not keen on funding the government if there's not bipartisan process.
Okay.
So that's the interesting part of it. One, the overperformance, and two, he's not averse to shutting the government down.
Oh, well, okay. He's ordinarily that close into the Washington, D.C. suburbs, you are, under normal circumstances, averse to shutting the government down. However, if all your constituents have already been fired by Doge, okay.
Hi everybody, this is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show on the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We have just won a seat in Congress overwhelmingly. Lots of people voted for us here in this district. Yeah, there's so good result in a special election, not at all unexpected. A very strongly Democratic district, and yet people were very enthusiastic about coming out in a district that was going to be easy to, and I say an easy win. It's never easy to win a seat in Congress, but
it's an overperformance.
Yes,
which is one thing. You will read all of these stories seeded usually by Republican operatives to papers that have no compunction against running it and not telling you where they got the information. But you may have heard the Democrats are unpopular. Everybody knows it. Let me just put everybody in scare quotes. And yet, given the opportunity to show up, they do. And given the opportunity to vote for Democrats, they do. And so what does it mean that they're unhappy with Democrats? Well, like the new member of Congress, whenever it is he actually is seated, WAMU story says, Walkinshaw said he didn't want a government shutdown. Well, of course he doesn't because of his constituents.
He doesn't want one,
but said he'd consider withholding his vote if the funding bill was not bipartisan. If they're looking to have my vote on any government funding, there needs to be a real bipartisan process. I'm not going to vote to extend cuts to health care that kick people off health care. I'm not going to vote to extend DOGE. Walkinshaw won his race by 10 points more than Harris did in the district. The Democratic National Committee touted the victory as another massive Democratic overperformance because, of course, they did. Yeah, Virginia political analyst Sam Shirazi, who I follow on Twitter and is a Twitter friend, cautioned against reading too much into the results in a special election in a heavily blue district and noted that Democrats have typically done well in off-year and special elections in recent years. It's unclear how many Trump voters ended up voting for the Democrats or how many Democrats who voted for Democrats in the past showed up. But turnout was pretty solid, considering the election came at an odd time of year and was the only contest on the ballot. And this comes 10 days before early voting begins in statewide races for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, controller of Virginia House of Delegates. If you were wondering if summer's over, early voting in Virginia starts in 10 days.
Wow. It's been going on for a while. For this race, this was interesting. I just randomly got texts about this race all the time. And reminder that it was coming up soon was the last day for early voting in this, which, was weeks ago. So I've been getting texts about voting for quite some time. And now I'm going to start getting them about early voting in the in the legislative and gubernatorial race as well.
Right. Perfect. And so wait, there's more. Is VCU Virginia Commonwealth University?
Yes.
That's a VCU Virginia poll. Governor Abigail Spanberger, 49. Winsome Earl Sears, 40.
Well, that's the same
At
number.
At this late date, 40 sucks.
Yeah, right. I mean,
okay, but keep that in mind.
Lieutenant You're both Governor, in the 40s. Yeah.
Lieutenant Governor
right.
Hashmi, Democrat, 45. Reed, 41. Isn't Reed the gay guy that the current governor Glenn Youngkin was trying to push out but failed?
You know what? I don't know. I don't recognize that name. That's funny. I'm paying zero attention to the lieutenant governor's race.
Note the number 41. Attorney General Jones, the Democrat?
Yeah.
Is Jones 47?
Yes,
Mayares?
Mayares is the
current incumbent?
Yes.
Republican? Is that right?
Right.
41. Notice how all the Republicans are getting 40 to 41, even as the bases start to consolidate. They're all stuck at 40 to 41.
That's the same, right? The same 4 out of the group of 10 people say, I'm still Republican.
So what does it mean? What do all these special elections mean? Well, I just told you.
Oh, okay then.
It means Republicans are losing is what it means.
Yeah, and this isn't a special. This one is not special. This is a regularly scheduled election, and it looks like they're going to lose that one too. In the
but it's an off year, as we like to say, and you guys don't like to say.
Right.
Every year, it's our election. It's not an off year. It's your off year.
Right. You get off of my year.
I got your off year right here.
You got your peanut butter in my off year.
Yeah. So there's that. So I thought that was interesting. But again, those are reasonably strong numbers for the Democrats who are likely to win those races. It's not a done deal, but voting starting soon, and despite the stated, purported, alleged optimism on the part of Republicans, I don't see it.
Right. Well, use the opportunity. Go and vote early before they either get rid of that or whatever. But
get rid of voting, right? Vote while you can.
Keep your momentum, keep your enthusiasm up by heading out to the polls and casting an early ballot and having it out of the way so that you could volunteer on election day to hand out literature or drive people to the polls or hand out food if that's legal.
Enthusiasm.
Okay.
Enthusiasm.
We are now speaking of those.
Zohran Mamdani
Oh.
has too much money.
What? No.
He's hit his cap. He can't collect money from small funds anymore. So he's telling people, don't give me money. Give me your time. Just like you
Okay.
were saying, David.
No.
Give me your time. It's valuable.
Oh,
Volunteer
I
for the
feel like
campaign.
Zoran
We'd love to
Mamdani.
have you.
I'm going out for a bite to eat.
Yeah. This is from the New York Times from just the other day, but there's a sub-story here I want to mention.
Oh.
Mamdani holds huge lead in mayor's race, Times Siena poll finds. New York Times Siena is a pretty reliable poll. In fact, these days it's one of the best in the country.
Well.
Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee in the New York City mayoral race, is way ahead of his three rivals, but his lead would diminish considerably if the field shrank to a two-man race.
Really?
What's
Okay.
a funny thing about that? You see, if you want to get your name out of the ballot, off the ballot, you got to do it by tomorrow.
Oh. Well, all right. I would have thought even
Eric Adams
further
says he's
in
not
advance.
dropping out Curtis Sliwa, the Republican perennial loser, is not dropping out. He says, no way.
He's
Not
the nominee
over.
from a major party. What's he
I'll
dropping
have to
out
die.
for? Yeah.
So he's
All
the
right.
Republican. Adams is an independent with almost no support, but a big ego. And they're not dropping out. And as of tomorrow, they can't drop out. Yeah, you can go to court, but your name is still going to be on the ballot, and maybe it will and maybe it won't. And the only publicity you're going to get is bad stuff. So Cuomo, Sliwa, and Adams voters are basically interchangeable.
Yeah, maybe. All right.
If Sliwa drops out, this is what the poll says, the votes go to Cuomo. If Adams drops out, the votes go to Cuomo.
Yeah.
If Cuomo drops out, the votes go to Sliwa and Adams.
Well, yes. Although I thought it would be funny if you
at
said
this
they go to
particular
Cuomo
point in
anyway.
time, Zoran Mamdani has 46% of the vote, nearly a majority. Andrew Cuomo has 24. Curtis Sliwa has 15. Eric Adams has an unmeasurable 9. Didn't know, didn't say, wouldn't tell you if I could, 5%.
Okay, that's almost
Okay.
Adams.
So those 5% are likely to go to Mamdani anyway. Zoran Mamdani has opened a commanding lead in the race for mayor of New York City, buoyed by support for his affordability platform and by the splintered opposition, according to New York Times Siena. The poll found that 46% of likely voters currently plan to choose Mamdani. Again, likely voters. What's a likely voter?
Oh, right.
If and when the electorate changes, see Nepal, things change. If you didn't get the electorate right, you're wrong. And a lot of young people going to show up. So I'm just saying, 24% of likely voters in New York City said they'll support Cuomo, who's running as an independent, after losing. 15% would back Curtis Sliwa. They all probably live on Staten Island. And 9% favored Mayor Eric Adams. Probably think it's Don Adams, the late comedian.
No, maybe.
Survey captured the state of the race in early September at a moment of unusual flux. The day after polling began, the New York Times reported that Trump and powerful figures in New York City were endeavoring to create a one-on-one contest between Cuomo and Mamdani.
Well,
and this
they're not
includes negotiations about Adams potentially suspending the campaign and accepting a nomination to be ambassador to, as you like to call it, Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow.
Presidential
that's some
advisors have also discussed strategies to push Sliwa out. None of them are working, by the way, and then are going to working, and they better come to fruition before tomorrow if they want to get these names off the ballot. See, and what I'm saying is people in New York City hate. They know, they understand, and hate Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So if you become the
for a long
candidate
time.
of Donald Trump, which Mamdani is easily capable of painting Cuomo as,
well, he is.
You lose more.
Yeah, good. Terrific. I don't think
these
they're
are
going to be able to
floors,
engineer
not
this thing
ceilings.
to
I
work.
think Mamdani may hit 50, but we'll see.
Yeah. As it becomes more and more obvious, I'm sure there's a lot of soft Cuomo support out there where they're just, I don't know. I was told that this Mamdani guy was somehow dangerous or outlandish, and then as time went on, they realized that he was going to win. They start to come around like, actually, it doesn't seem like he's all that bad. And I'm a little embarrassed at having to stick by Cuomo. I knew his name, and Slee was ridiculous, and I hate Adams. And then people will eventually say, I might get on this bandwagon. I don't know. He seems kind of
But part of the
happy.
deal here
Yeah.
is it's outlining the attacks that Cuomo and to a lesser extent Adams, because he didn't have any money, are trying to pull are not working. The new poll suggests that Mamdani's success so far is rooted in two factors: voters' personal regard for him. He's the only one that people like.
Yeah.
Out of the bunch. I mean, that's what the poll says. Voters' personal
That's
regard
true.
for him and their sense that he's best positioned to address two of the top electoral issues, affordability and housing costs. 60% of likely voters said Mamdani was inspirational, had good character, and cared about people like them. He's the only candidate viewed positively by a majority of voters despite months of attacks on him. He has an edge with all racial groups, leading Cuomo narrowly among black voters and by a larger margin among Hispanic voters. They trusted Mamdani over Cuomo 49-23 when it comes to handling the city's daunting affordability challenge. His proposal of freeze increases on rent-stabilized units is particularly strong. 70% of voters favor the policy. Widely popular also is increasing taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers.
Yes, you'd think so.
So, he's a socialist. Well, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Now, here's where it gets
no,
interesting. By a large margin, likely voters said Mamdani was the candidate who's best addressed the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. I have a sub-piece on that. 43% favored his position, compared to 16% for Cuomo. Mamdani has been among the most outspoken proponents of Palestinian rights and a longtime critic of Israel. And the poll registered vulnerabilities for him as well. They have doubts about whether he can deliver on his ambitious campaign plans. They love the idea of free buses, for example, but don't think he can pull it off. They're not really sure about his affiliation with Democratic Socialists of America, but they're voting for him anyway, folks.
Okay.
Despite Mr. Cuomo's primary loss, the survey suggests that he has more room to increase his support than Adams or Sliwa, and he's been very aggressive about trying to convince voters Mamdani's too inexperienced and too ideologically left-leaning, but it's not working.
Oh, well, maybe he has no idea where most
It says here,
New Yorkers
and I will
are.
read, there are signs that key lines of attack by Mr. Cuomo are not working. He has spent months criticizing Mamdani for his past support for defending the police department and argued his rival would be ill-equipped to go toe-to-toe with Trump. Voters say they trusted the men equally on crime and favor Mamdani over Cuomo dealing with Trump.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for
So that
telling
means
us,
what you're doing isn't working.
Right. Okay, well,
right, next.
I don't know what to say, really.
New York City poll, Emerson College, different than New York Times Siena. 2025 mayoral election, Mamdani 43, Andrew Cuomo 28, Sliwa 10, Adams 7. Sliwa's going to get 10 to 15%. It'd be surprising if he got 20. Eric Adams, it'll be surprising if he gets double digits.
Yeah.
Cuomo is like 28 to 30. That's where he is. In a hypothetical head-to-head, Mamdani 47, Cuomo 40, and Mamdani 51, Adams 30. But these head-to-heads are not happening. They're just not happening. They're not there.
Yeah. All right. Not much.
Next story in the same vein. This is from the New York Times, and it's fascinating. Gaza war turns New Yorkers against Israel. You might as well write a headline that says Netanyahu turns America against Israel.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yes.
With mayor's racist backdrop, more New
angle.
Yorkers say their sympathies lie with Palestinians rather than Israel in the long-running conflict in Gaza, according to New York Times Siena. This is unheard of. This is astounding. There are Israeli supportive blocs, BLOC, in New York City that haven't changed despite that. Palestinian rights over Israeli position on the Gaza situation. People are not in favor of what Israel is doing. Now, this needs to be understood by the rest of the Democratic Party because that's writ large all over the country. And the idea that, John Fetterman, whatever Israel does is right because Israel is not a popular position.
Yeah, well, it's an old candidate in the box piece that used to have,
which Kristen Gillibrand does.
Never really had validity.
Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, does because, like a month ago in the old days, that's what you needed to do. But that's not true anymore. That's my point here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, point well taken. You can't simply pull out that card. It was never valid in the first place, really, but it was something you could get away with because, daily atrocities happening. No.
Right.
All right then.
Or in other words, Mamdani, he's a socialist and I'm for Israel. And the electorate yawns and says, and your point is what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all right. Unique environment to try the, oh, yeah, well, he's not reflexively pro-Israel. Yep, that's right.
That's right. So, yawning gap of perspectives toward the conflict. 44% of registered New York City voters sympathize more with Palestinians. 26 sympathize more with Israel. These are astounding numbers, folks. Take it from a lifelong New Yorker. Is particularly stark given that the city is home to the largest Jewish population outside Israel. The polls also found that voters broadly think criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic. 51% to 31%.
Yes.
The prosecution of the war have played part in sullying New York's opinion, including traditionally staunch allies of Israel, to shift their views and speak out against Netanyahu. While the Siena poll has not previously surveyed voters in the city on the topic, national polls have shown Americans becoming ever more critical of Israel as the war has continued. That's my point. Now, a sidebar to this, which is the point of the other piece, while this is a sidebar to the other piece, okay, Mr. Adams and Mr. Cuomo have relentlessly criticized Mr. Mamdani's stance in Israel, calling him an anti-Semite and terrorist sympathizer. The poll's finding underscore, and here are the important words that you should hear and internalize, underscore just how much Mr. Adams and Mr. Cuomo may have misread the electorate by expending energy to attack Mr. Mamdani's views on Israel. In fact, and I'm thinking Winsome Earl Sears in Virginia attacking trans rights.
Okay.
Fine. Your point is what? In fact, Mr. Mamdani has a slim... Oh, Ed Gillespie attacking people who support caravans.
Yeah.
Fine. And your point is what?
I'm not sure.
In fact, Mr. Mamdani held a slim lead among the poll's relatively small sample of Jewish likely voters, with 30% closely followed by Adams and Cuomo. More than 70% of Jewish voters said they sympathize with Israel, compared to 20% who said they sympathize with Palestinians. That 20 is pretty big. Overall, Mamdani leads the pack in terms of who voters think is best to address the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, 39-17 for Cuomo. That's pretty amazing. And the primary victory and continued electoral strength has been driven by strong support from Gen Z.
What do you know?
This demographic group was especially likely to say Mr. Mamdani had best address the conflict. Younger voters. Mr. Mamdani's response from one of those voters, a 19-year-old, said,
19. Welcome.
If elected mayor struck with her, several of the other candidates, including Cuomo, said Israel would be the place to travel first. Mamdani said, I'm staying in New York City. I don't feel like I have to go to Israel. And younger voters are saying, well, yeah. And older voters are saying, oh, my God, gasp. Listen to what he said. He's doomed.
Again, candidate in the box thing. Where are you going to visit? Oh, Israel. 10 years ago.
Well, I'm going to stay home and concentrate on rent and speak out against Israel and also eat falafel. And they say, I'm with you.
Yeah, right. And it's okay. You can even eat Israeli.
You can eat gyros. I don't care. You can have Italian water ices. I'm just interested in street food, and you're doing it, and I'm with you.
And also interesting observation along the way in there was that among the Jewish population, just to point out that this is a thing, and not only a thing, it's probably the majority view. Do you more sympathize with Israel or with Palestinians? Israel. Right. But do you think what they're doing is right or wrong? Oh, wrong. But you just said you sympathize with Israeli people? Sure. I mean, I know them. Yeah, I'm related to them. They're visiting here all the time. To my wedding. Right, exactly. But is the war and the way they're prosecuting it right? Oh, no, absolutely not. It has to stop immediately. Okay. Just so everybody knows. And I think everybody who listens to the show knows, occasionally you'll run into people who don't actually know that, and you can point that out. Yes.
While Mr. Cuomo has continued to denounce Mr. Mamdani's views, the former governor's supporters are not especially likely to say that criticizing Israel is anti-Semitic. Yes. A plurality of his supporters, about 43%, said such criticism is not dissimilar to the share of New Yorkers overall. Half of registered voters said they thought criticizing Israel is not inherently anti-Semitic.
Right.
And that's because, as some of his supporters to Cuomo said, The Israeli government is extreme. It's right wing, and the public isn't happy with them. So
Right.
thank you, Mr. Netanyahu. You've single-handedly managed to lose an incredible amount of support for the nation of Israel, and especially in strongholds like New York. So, like, what are you doing?
I don't know. But I wonder. Probably a fair number of people. Well, I guess they wouldn't be included in this poll either. But as you were pointing out, largest Jewish population outside of Israel, but also includes a very large number, usually, of people who are probably absentee voters in Israel, living and working in New York, and it must be an interesting time for them too, as well.
Yeah.
Sitting through this election and watching the nuances of Israeli politics be more or less lost on American voters, but just, I don't know. What can I tell you? Probably an interesting time. Although there are probably more people folding up the tent than either heading back to Israel or heading elsewhere. Just in terms of being an Israeli abroad, not great, I am sure, right now. And
Right. So G. Elliott Morris, by the way, puts together a chart and graph of recent presidents, and he's done this for a while.
Okay.
Obama, Bush, Biden,
Correct.
Donald
so far.
Trump 2017, Donald Trump 2025. The only president that Trump is more popular than is Trump 2017, and only by a slight amount. At this particular point in time in 2017, Trump was minus 14 in terms of approval, disapproval. Now he's minus 12, 11.5. So everybody else, including Biden, was more popular. Biden was even. Obama was plus 10. Bush was plus 17, about to take off to plus 75 because tomorrow.
Yeah. Right. September 11th tomorrow. Today being the 10th, of course.
9/11, as they like
But
to
if
say.
you have a September 10th mentality, today is your day.
But I am simply saying Trump was and is and remains a very unpopular president.
Yeah. Boo, that guy sucks. Get out of our restaurant. Yeah. What can I tell you? It's
Get
true.
out of the US
and
Open.
Right. Basically. And yet, right. The
You
press
show up,
is
you get
trained to tread lightly on these things. Just as there's a candidate in a boxing, there's also journalism in a box. You don't do this sort of thing. You don't point this unpopularity out to the president. The president is always a strong man and widely popular, unless, of course, he comes from one of the two major parties, in which case he's widely hated and possibly senile.
Greg Sargent writes, news, Senate Majority PAC is releasing new polling, that would be the Democrats, showing majorities of likely 2026 voters see Trump's tariffs as a sign he's reckless, not strong. As I argue, see below, Democrats can directly attack perceptions of Trump's, quote, strength, unquote, which is foundational to his durability. Many media types and Dems continue to operate as if Trump is politically invincible. Same thing with George W. Bush after 9/11. It took years for people to recognize, understand, and say, you know what, I'm looking at the numbers. He hasn't been that popular for a while.
Yeah, nor is he keeping us safe.
And 9/11, and it's been downhill ever since and never went back up.
Yeah, well, not much was going to bring anybody to that level again.
No, but everything was down.
Yeah,
it never went up once he went down.
Right, true. I mean, you could have trended down and then picked yourself back up again with, let's say, a popular or effective policy of some kind.
So Sargent says, he's not Teflon Don, but in truth, he's become a weak, failing, diminished, unpopular, naked emperor figure, and it's time to treat him as such.
Well,
his jobs report fiasco, his whole strong versus weak frame, reality's ripping the clothes off, Putin humiliating him, failing to indict in D.C., he couldn't indict a ham sandwich.
Right.
Republicans warning mail voting edict will backfire, tariffs a blundering fiasco, the economy is tanking, deportations deeply unpopular because he's not picking up the criminals he said he was going to do. He's just doing.
Right. He's picking up everybody's neighbors. And sometimes everybody. Other, actual people who are American citizens. Well, you're a little brown, so maybe you shouldn't be an American citizen. Oh, all right. And maybe we can amend the Constitution and get rid of you as a citizen. Oh, well, that's a little disappointing.
Anyway, that's it for me today.
Okay.
Let's see if I can give you anything else that's like super duper interesting.
I'm certain.
Oh, here's one from
Yes.
Spencer Hakimian, a conservative never-Trumper who usually follows the economy.
Okay.
Silicon Valley, he writes, already betting on a Democrat Congress within 14 months. That's from a story that says big tech looks to strengthen frayed relationship with Democrats ahead of midterms. Whenever you see a story like that,
Yeah.
that is what we oldsters used to call finger in the wind story.
Okay. Yes. There was the similar situation yesterday in the New York City mayoral race, and it was very interesting to see one of the papers that was covering it saying their version of the story was, okay, the big real estate developers are getting together to say we got to do something. We're running out of time to attack Mamdani in a way that we can make sure that he loses and make sure Cuomo is the next mayor. Otherwise, we're doomed. And then another paper's view of it was actually a lot of the wealthy real estate developers are now beginning to say it looks like Mamdani's an inevitability and start giving him money.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So the normal things are happening, but it was very interesting to see one paper saying, no, what's actually happening is the wealthy developers are going to cast a last-ditch effort to try to derail his candidacy, when in fact it seems like same old, same old. The community is split, and some of them are looking to duck and cover, and others of them are just angry that they're going to lose. But yeah, the normal games are afoot. People are beginning to bet on who's going to win, and they may actually be betting online with the Silicon Valley people. They've built a new app and taking bets on those things. Yeah, all right. Well, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see, because the election is, if I understand, is not tomorrow, right?
From what I understand.
Right, so we'll be able to talk about this again.
Yeah.
Good news.
Maybe tomorrow.
Okay. And we'll cover what Zoran Mamdani is eating. They're not covering that the way they cover it when Donald Trump goes out to eat, I notice. I don't know. All right. Well, all right. Anything else comes to mind, then pass it along and behind the scenes, and we'll read it aloud. But we're coming to the top of the hour, and we'll just, at this point, have to say it's about 30 seconds away from the music, but thank you for coming by. Let me know if anything else comes across the transom as we speak. You did bring up the jobs numbers, and I know this was, I guess, the first.
Pretty bad.
And this was the first time around for his hand-picked new BLS guy, right? Wasn't that
we'll
the
see
case?
what happens to that job.
And I think they had sort of glitch.
A lot of times you don't know you're in a recession until like months after you're already in a recession.
Yeah. That's kind of the way they determine those things. But he was brought in because the numbers are fake, but we're going to bring in our guy. And then he couldn't get the numbers for a while, and everybody sort of suspected, well, they're erasing numbers and transposing them so that the numbers look better. And then they didn't look good. So, no solution there. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I guess we'll pocket this. Not in the same way we used to pocket these things, but pocket this for tomorrow. Greg has sent me something we'll save to read until tomorrow. But the American Prospect, picking up on the story we briefed you on, well, I say briefed, but we spent actually quite a long time on it yesterday, about their title of the piece, "The House Should Have the Votes to Release the Epstein Files in 2 weeks." 2 weeks, everybody. But yeah, we were discussing the magic number for discharge petitions being 218, and for some reason not 216 as it should be, given the number of vacancies in the House. One of those vacancies has, or at least we know for sure who's going to fill that vacancy, but they haven't been sworn in yet. That also will be interesting to see whether Speaker Johnson tries to drag his feet at all in swearing in the newly elected member from Virginia's 11th district. I guess he's got some ability to drag things along. I guess he could really exaggerate it and make a big fuss about it and insist that there was something somehow wrong with the certification of the election, as Republicans do. To what end, I'm not really sure. It's not going to give them any vote. It will cut slightly into their margin. But anyway, he certainly doesn't have to respond and swear him in immediately. But there's very little reason not to, and there's very little reason for any delay. So he may just say, it's not going to change much materially. We'll just go ahead and do the normal thing and swear the person in. Anyway, but we'll go back to this discussion and discuss it with Greg tomorrow, because he's brought us this article. And there's so many other things to cover. And we did talk about it a little bit yesterday, but I always like to bring them up to date in real time, so they can ask questions, because they're very often the same questions that you might have, but that you have said, well, I'm not going to bother emailing my question per se, although I welcome your doing so. You should go ahead. Social media, email, Daily Coast mail, messages via Patreon. Pose your questions. If there's anything I didn't answer, I'd be happy to approach that again. And most of these things can be had with just a little bit of follow the dots here. If you had the inclination to say, well, what is the procedure for a discharge petition, and had the presence of mind to say, there's a resource that can tell me, Congressional Research Service, I'll search for a CRS report on discharge petition procedure. You read that, and it'll start to discuss the 218 vote threshold, and then it has footnotes, and then you got to follow the footnotes. And very often they will lead you right into the congressional record on the day when that precedent was set, and you read their debate and you try to make some sense of it. It's not always possible to do, but bottom line being, this doesn't make sense, but this is what they said, and then they banged the gavel, and that's that. You know how it is when somebody has the gavel and they want something to happen. All right, let's jump into a couple of the other stories dominating the news today. This one came to mind as I was looking, or came to my attention as I was looking around about the news about the restaurant visit yesterday. But NPR reminds us, as Greg did earlier in the show, that technically speaking, this is our headline here, Trump's control of the D.C. police is due to expire tonight. Then what? That's a good question, but also a good reminder, thanks to Rachel Treisman, Treisman, for NPR. By the way, what affiliate station for NPR bringing us the news on their website? I'm on the WAMU website. That we discussed that earlier too. They brought us one of their other stories. Anyway, the story here is basically this. While Trump is cracking down, well, I don't know, probably shouldn't even use that framing because it makes him sound like a strongman. Trump is futzing around with bringing in federal law enforcement officers from various departments and bureaus and pressing them into service as immigration Nazis or trash gatherers, and also nationalizing various units of the National Guard or utilizing special dispatches of National Guard from various states and having them pick up trash. He also has assumed control of the Metropolitan Police Department of the city of Washington, D.C. And this, I guess, is where we should tie this into the point made by Chris Geidner, I don't know, a week or so ago, and we brought it up probably at the end of last week, sort of as an aside, but a very interesting point that he was making in the run-up to what we guess is supposed to be the sequel to the Washington, D.C. and L.A. crackdowns, Chicago. Again, wrong framing there. Futz around rather than crackdown. But that he was reminding everybody they've done a pretty good job, PR-wise, the Donald Trump people and his fans in the media, for making the case for the inevitability of the Chicago invasion and the normalizing of the idea of a Chicago invasion by saying, well, it happened in either L.A. or, in more to the point, in D.C. And it was so thoroughgoing, he brought in all these other law enforcement agencies. He detailed the FBI to patrol the streets. He brought in the National Guard, and he took over the police department. And Chris was pointing out, D.C. is a very, very special case. And I don't know whether they put any thought into this as a plan, but if they did, well, that's rather amazing. And then it would be a good one. And if they didn't, then they just lucked into it. But D.C., by virtue of the fact that it is the federal capital and that it's not a state and that the Constitution contemplated a high degree of control over the federal city by Congress, yes, and Congress has then abdicated that role to the presidency, as they've abdicated a number of powers that they were supposed to hold to the presidency by rubber stamping things or refusing to get in the way and assert themselves anyway. But D.C. is a special case. There's a real mechanism and a real legal claim, especially with this Supreme Court, that the administration can make to having special power over the institutions involved in the D.C. takeover, up to and including the police department. And this is a condition that doesn't exist on paper in Chicago or anywhere else. But because everybody saw it happen, even if it was wrong, and even if it's eventually legally struck down, people saw it happen. They read the headlines. They saw the news. Donald Trump took over Washington, D.C. and, scrambled their brains. And now he's out to dinner. And if that's all you're paying attention to, okay, a thing happened and it was effective. Now he says he's going to do it to Chicago. Whether you're a fan of it or not, you think, what are the things that can happen in Chicago? Well, he can send the National Guard. He can send the FBI. He can send DOJ. He can send HSI, ICE, Border Patrol, any Bureau of Prisons for that matter. He can send any law enforcement officers he can muster up. He can fake it and detail people from the Agriculture Department to put badges on them and tell them they're cops. And as we know, quote unquote, know from D.C., and this also is related to something else we spent some time on yesterday as we were talking over the precedents and the need for precision in reporting, which is ironic because I'm blabbing in ways that are probably not super specific and precise. But if you're just reporting to people, yeah, Trump took over the D.C. Police Department too. And now he's got total control over law enforcement patrolling of the streets of Washington, D.C., and he's thinking about doing the same to Chicago. Well, is he thinking about doing the same to Chicago? He might be, because he may not understand the differences between Chicago and D.C. in terms of the legal differences about what the federal government is and isn't entitled by law to do and by the Constitution to do in D.C. as versus Chicago, but we're just reporting it as shorthand. The stuff he did in D.C., he says he wants to do in Chicago. Only there's no constitutional authority for doing many of the things that happened in D.C. in Chicago. Why can the President of the United States, why can the federal government take over control of the Metropolitan Police Department in D.C.? Is there because D.C. is the federal city, and there's no state government there to run it. And we very purposefully didn't make it a state unto itself for various reasons. Well, maybe all bad reasons, but for various reasons. D.C., not the same as Chicago. Chicago is in the middle of a state. Well, not the middle, but it's in the state. It's a state called Illinois. They have their own government. The federal Constitution guarantees that many of those powers, like the administrative powers of the state, remain with the state. Not that they won't ignore them or that the SCOTUS can't overturn them if they just feel like it or whatever. But there are additional barriers in Chicago that aren't in existence in D.C. And had the reporting spent more time on the details of it and why D.C. is a special case, it would have been easier to illustrate that this at least shouldn't be able to happen in the same way to Chicago, and that there are significant barriers to making it work, which is probably also why they have begun musing about taking over different cities instead of Chicago. Maybe we'll do it in New Orleans, Or maybe we'll do it elsewhere. And I think what they were looking for there was, now we're beginning to realize what legal barriers stand in the way of taking over a Democratic-run city in a Democratic-run state. That's tough. I won't be able to take charge all that easily of the National Guard, or won't get voluntary compliance from the governor handing over the keys to National Guard units, whereas I might get that in a state that might be a blue-run, Democratic-run city in a Republican-run state. I'll get cooperation from the governor. Maybe we should try one of those. And indeed, focus is shifting. And that also now brings me to something else that I didn't put aside, but I did notice some comments. Apparently yesterday, Caroline Leavitt made a little slip up in, a Freudian slip, I guess you would call it, in the press conference. And I'll have to scroll back to see if I can find it, but I saw a very good commentary made on it. First, I guess the observation from Brendan Nyhan saying, picking up on, wow, everybody's involved in this one. So coverage of Caroline Leavitt at the press conference. Where does the coverage of the press conference itself come from? Aaron Rupar, of course, quoting Leavitt here saying, these are the bad guys that we are picking up in Washington, D.C. every day. I don't know who she was talking about. Doesn't really matter, because the next line is what happens, has got the real impact here. The president would love to do this in every Democrat-run city across the country. Note the slip there. Well, this is very interesting. So everybody else noted it. Michael Clemens is in this screen cap taking note of this slip up. This is the official spokesperson for the White House, stating that the president hopes to deploy the United States military to occupy every city controlled by the political party that opposes him. Explicitly. Yes, that is a tremendous point. And Brendan Nyhan takes note of that and says no one would, once again, this is his favorite line, no one would be confused about what is happening here if they saw it in another country. But here in this country, right, we keep blinders on. It can't happen here. So we won't contemplate it happening here, even when it is happening here. The president's spokesperson says he would love to use the military to take over every city run by Democrats. Why? We meant because, we're champing down on crime. Yeah, I think you gave away the game here. And I thought, even better comment, and more to the point here, from Nicholas Grossman, whose name we've called out a couple of times of late, international relations professor at the University of Illinois, who says, yeah, very weird that anyone in the press covers Trump's illegal domestic military deployments as a crime story. That is, it should be covered as a crime story, Donald Trump's crimes against the United States. But he means it's very weird that the press still buys into the idea that Trump is bringing in the military and taking over police departments, which he can't do in the same way in Chicago or any other city other than D.C. or whatever, and increasing patrols on the streets because, we're cracking down on crime. If you're still buying that line when the White House press secretary openly says every Democrat-run city instead of every high-crime city, Nicholas says, it's weird that anyone in the press would be covering it as though this was about crime when the press secretary herself says it's about doing this to Democrat-run cities. That's not merely repeating their lie, that is to say, the lie that we're doing this about because of crime and high crime exists only in Democrat-run cities. That's not just repeating their lie. It's changing, really, let me add a word or two here, changing the nature of the story from an admission of what they're really doing into a lie for them. In other words, on their behalf, right? If the press secretary says, this is something we want to do to every city run by Democrats. I thought you said this was about crime. Oh, yeah. That's what I meant. And yet the reporting is, all right, we're treating this as though it really is about crime, even though they occasionally screw up and say it's really about politics. You chose a Democratic mayor. We're going to send federal troops in to occupy your city to teach you not to do that anymore. Well, if they actually blurt that out, why cover it as though it were just an error? Why cover the rest of the story as though it really was about the lie about being about high crime in the first place? That's an excellent point. Well taken. Why the hell did I say this? Right, because we had the NPR article, Trump's control of the D.C. police is due to expire tonight. Did you know that? Then what? Asks Rachel Treisman, and the answer is we're really not sure. President Trump's takeover of local D.C. police, which again you can't do in other cities. It only happens because this is a federal city, and under the Constitution, the federal government runs the place. And while they've ceded some authority in the Home Rule Act, it only happened relatively recently. Washington, D.C. can elect its own mayor and council and run its affairs locally by virtue of the fact that Congress at one point said, we'll grant you the opportunity to do that, with the caveat that another act of Congress could snatch it back. But okay, Trump's takeover of local D.C. police, though, is set to expire today, Wednesday, even as other forms of federal control continue. On August 11th, Trump declared a, quote, and it really is a quote-unquote crime emergency in the District of Columbia, using his authority under the, how recent was the Home Rule Act? 1973 Rule Act. Now, for the younger folks out there, that's not recent at all. It's from before I was born. Well, it's not an 18-something or other, yada, yada, posse comitatus act. But in 1973, within living memory for like me and other people, and quite a few Americans. All right, so again, it's only since 1973 that D.C. has had that kind of home rule power. So, along with the legislation granting home rule, they also reminded everybody, well, the president can, if necessary, in an emergency, snatch back control to the federal government of this federal city. That's how it is that he has taken over the D.C. Police Department. That's what's missing, the missing link in his desire to take over, let's say, the Chicago Police Department. There's no legal mechanism by which he can easily do that. Now, he may just say, I'm doing it, and all the cops say, yes, sir, we can't wait to wear oversized blue suits and red ties. Who knows? There's rubber stamping, but there's also, if anybody has any inkling about standing on ceremony, they can create a pretty, normally a pretty sturdy legal roadblock to this. So again, this all happened on August 11th. The crime emergency was declared using his authority under the 1973 Home Rule Act to activate the D.C. National Guard and take control of the district's Metropolitan Police Department. But the Home Rule Act limits that power. You might have guessed that back in the olden days in 1973, Nixon era, right, a Democratic-dominated Congress passed this act in the shadow of Watergate and everything else. But so, you would expect that they would have some safeguards on there. That was back in the time when we recognized that there ought to be, checks and balances as against the various branches, and particularly the executive branch at that point in time. As I said, shadow of or the development of the Watergate case still in 1973. Anyway, the Home Rule Act limits the power, which is meant to be used for emergencies, like real ones, not just saying so. That's one of the problems with this and other types of legislation, other items of legislation like it, is they very frequently say, well, the president isn't going to just declare it with no evidence whatsoever. There may be a difference of opinion, but clearly they're going to lay out some evidence. Where we don't even have to bother saying that you have to bring evidence to bear and convince people, Because of course the president will, but they didn't anticipate somebody who was just like, oh, I can just say it's an emergency and that's enough. Technically, yes. All right, well, then let's do that. Well, you should have anticipated that. We all anticipated that 10 years ago, 20 years ago with George Bush. Anyway, the limitation was that there's only a 30-day window during which this takeover of the police department is effective. You know, like the War Powers Act was supposed to be, but which also got thrown out the window by Congress, or SCOTUS eventually, and by Congress, actually, because they just kept rubber stamping things. You have the right to put a stop to this. Yes, but I'm afraid to. Well, then, nothing you can do. So, the takeover can only last for 30 days, at which point the House and Senate would need to authorize an extension. Why? Because the Constitution gives that authority, running the federal district, to Congress, not the president, to Congress, but they gave it away to the president. But again, that's the thing that doesn't exist with respect to Chicago, just to say it one more time. Congress has so far not indicated that it plans to do so, because they were on vacation for most of it, but they are back now, and they are fighting about how many signatures it takes to put on a discharge petition instead, plus also looking to not shut down the government, maybe. So, the 30 days is running out tonight. And despite Trump's earlier talk of seeking an extension, he has changed his tune in recent days, praising D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser for her cooperation and touting a drop in crime in the city. And I guess we'll all find out whether or not, on balance, it paid off for Muriel Bowser to play along, thinking that it maybe the strategy was the president will see this and say, oh, actually, she's one of the good ones, and we'll give her control of her cops back. I don't know to what end, but maybe it might just be that, or it may be he just stabs her in the back another time. Mayor Muriel Bowser of D.C. has become very popular because she worked with me and my great people in bringing crime down to virtually nothing in D.C., Trump wrote on Truth Social last week. Crime was already on the decline, as you know, in D.C. since peaking in 2023, but Bowser has actually credited federal intervention with accelerating that drop, even as she stressed that the presence of immigration agents and National Guard troops, who are not subject to time limits, by the way, is not working. Bowser issued an order last week to ensure, quote, during and after the presidential emergency, unquote, continued cooperation between the city and federal law enforcement. She stressed that it is not an extension of the Trump emergency, but rather a framework for how we get out of it after September 10th. I want the message to be clear to the Congress. We have a framework to request or use federal resources in our city, she said at a news conference last Wednesday. We don't need a presidential emergency. Congress does not appear interested in extending federal control over the local police. The chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, is turning his panel's focus this week to a raft of legislation that he says would oversee district affairs and make D.C. safe again, you see. And so too busy for dealing with the Epstein files, I guess. Here's a look at how D.C. got here and what could happen next. What did the MPD, Metropolitan Police Department, takeover entail? The administration's plan to appoint its own emergency police commissioner was almost immediately foiled in court after D.C.'s attorney general filed a lawsuit challenging the administration's bid for full control. D.C.'s chief of police, Pamela Smith, remained in charge while the federal government continued to have oversight over local police. Shortly after, Smith issued an order allowing MPD officers to share information with immigration agencies about people at traffic stops, as well as provide transportation for agency employees and people they have detained, marking a shift in cooperation. In the weeks since, local police and federal agencies have set up traffic checkpoints throughout the city and also worked together to detain delivery drivers. Very important, of course. At least 1,669 people have been arrested since the federal surge began on August 7th, and many of those arrests were for immigration-related offenses, as NPR has reported. After combing through court records and other data for the first 2 weeks of Trump's police takeover, NPR found that of the more than 1,050 defendants whose cases went to D.C. Superior Court, because not everybody was charged, remember that, prosecutors charged around 20% with felonies, including drug and gun crimes. The vast majority, 80%, were misdemeanors, warrants, traffic offenses, or prosecutors dropping the case. We made D.C. safe again. I went to a restaurant to prove it, basically, is the claim here. But 80% of the people who were arrested about things that pose no problem to anyone. Even people who are just like, ew, homeless people. They are not offended by misdemeanors, warrants, and traffic offenses. They're not happy, really, about those. I'm sure they're glad that people are being harassed, particularly if they're brown, but this wasn't what they thought the surge was supposed to prevent. Trump has repeatedly touted the mission's success, calling D.C. now a crime-free zone, although really it's a misdemeanor-free zone, and saying crime is down 100%, which I'm surprised he limited himself to 100%. Why not 1,500% like drug prices? Data from the Metropolitan Police Department and the D.C. Police Union supports officials' claims that crime has dropped since the federal surge, but not to zero. An MPD report released Tuesday shows that total crime has dropped 15% during the period from August 7th through September 8th compared with the same window last year. Notably, violent crime is down 39% and carjackings by 74%. There have been just 12 since the federal takeover compared with 47 during the same window in 2024. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And let's continue on with reading the NPR story about what's supposed to happen at midnight tonight, I guess, as the federal takeover, the executive branch takeover of the Metropolitan Police Department comes to an end. I think we had pointed out that, yes, there was, in fact, a drop in crime, even as opposed to the same period last year. I was sort of wondering whether, like extreme hot weather, more or less, might tamp down on just about every activity, including crime. But, it was probably just about as hot the year before. But now, of course, it makes sense that since there's guys with AR-15s standing around with nothing to do but supposedly fight crime, I guess, I guess it would be taken as a warning by anybody. And to that extent, I suppose you could say it's effective. Is it sustainable? Is it wise? Is it constitutionally sound? No. But what can I tell you? That's one of the trade-offs of supposedly one of the trade-offs of having a free society. So can you tamp down on crime in every city? Sure, you can. But can you remain a free and open society? No. But maybe Trump people just don't actually want that. They only said they wanted that. All right. In late August, Mayor Bowser, acknowledged that the Trump administration's intervention had led to a drop in gun crimes, homicides, and carjackings, but also a, quote, break in trust between police and community, especially with new federal partners. She said the city doesn't need masked immigration agents and National Guard troops from other states, but rather more police, prosecutors, judges, prevention programs, and local control. So, what is Congress considering? Probably nothing. D.C. residents, as well as elected officials, have protested against Trump's actions, but acknowledge there is not much they can do to block them since home rule gives the federal government so much power over the district. It's interesting. It's what would you call it? I don't know. It's odd that home rule, it's because the Home Rule Act established all of this. So it's oxymoronic, I guess you could say. The home rule gives the federal government so much power. Yes, the Home Rule Act reserved a lot of power for the federal government. They were the ones giving it away. They were the ones who have the power over the district under the Constitution. They were doing the normal and decent thing, saying, okay, federal government is based in D.C., but there's a real city here, that much of which has little to nothing to do with the federal government. Let them live their lives like they would in any other city. And if necessary, in the case of emergency, we can always take back over. We'll reserve that power to ourselves. Not supposed to use it this way, but, they didn't put that prohibition in there. Anyway, so as we said, everybody's protested, but they acknowledge that there's little that can be done given the structure of the Home Rule Act. Trump's repeated threats to send states' National Guards into cities like Chicago and Baltimore, they note parenthetically, very good, without consent of their governors, are more legally dubious. They should be exploring more of that. There should be a whole article about that. But there you go. At least it's noted here. The past month has renewed conversations about home rule, with many Democrats believing it should be strengthened. In August, Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland and Eleanor Holmes Norton, D.C.'s non-voting delegate to the House, reintroduced legislation that would grant D.C. full control over its police and National Guard, but many Republicans say the opposite. 2 Republican lawmakers introduced bills this year to repeal home rule, while Trump said in August that, quote, we're going to look at that. In the House, the Oversight Committee is due to consider 14 bills this week that would exert more control over D.C., in particular its criminal justice system. Among them are proposals to prohibit the D.C. Council from pursuing progressive soft-on-crime sentencing policy, lower the age of eligibility for juveniles to be tried as adults, and change mandatory minimum sentences. Others would impose a fine of up to $500 or up to 30 days imprisonment as a penalty for camping outdoors on public property. Important, sure. Republican leaders have not said which bills will get a vote in the full House or when that might occur. Republicans hold a slim majority, as you know, in the House and would need near unanimous support for the measures to advance. If they are successful, the legislation would go to the Senate, as you may have heard from I'm Just a Bill, I'm only a Bill, where Democrats could block the legislation using the filibuster. But of course, one of the earlier stories in the week, Republicans rediscovering their ability to change precedent around filibuster rules if necessary, if they feel like it, essentially. Republicans in Congress may have the ability to impose their will on D.C., but I will not make it easy for them, Norton said. These bills are yet further evidence of why we need D.C. statehood. Well, that's probably further away as a reality than it's been for quite some time, given how much Trump and Republicans are enjoying lording it over D.C. All right. By the way, Scott had sent me sent me a couple of things in the last day or so. One about the story about Trump dining out, which looked like somewhat interesting. In the Washingtonian magazine, Jessica Sidman writing the piece, Why Trump Should Not Dine Out in D.C. I mean, because we don't like him. That's probably the real reason. But interesting point here. No restaurant wants to end up in the center of a political maelstrom. I mean, I don't know if we really have to dive into the whole thing here, but good point. Over his 2 terms as president, Donald Trump hasn't dined at a single restaurant in D.C. except the now closed steakhouse in his former hotel. Yesterday, however, he floated, before he went, the very real possibility of finally exploring the city's dining scene. So this was a September 4th article. And Scott had sent it to me by way of making the point, which I assume they're getting onto now, which is this. Will you visit a restaurant in D.C.? A reporter Trump asked. That's interesting. I think they mean a reporter asked Trump, yes, during a meeting with the Polish president. Sure. Will it be a Polish restaurant? They did not ask that question. But, okay, there's general questions going on. It happened to be while he's meeting with the Polish president. Polish president was probably like, hey, we're still working here. Stop talking about going out to dinner. But it's Donald Trump. He's never going to stop talking about going out to dinner. I might. Sure. You haven't gone to one in either of your terms that wasn't. How do you know? Trump interrupted. You want to prove me wrong? I think it's something we could consider doing. I'd love to do it. I love the White House food, but after a while, I can see going to a nice restaurant. It's safe. So you see what's going on here. It's amazing Trump temper in this one as well. Basically, as Scott was trying to tell me, he was dared to go to a restaurant. And because Trump has been saying for the past couple of weeks, my surge of the police, my takeover of D.C. is so successful, people are going out to dinner again, even though, the statistics were reservations were down like, some significant half. People were afraid to go out, not because of crime, but because they thought they were going to be harassed by weirdos brought in from around the country to patrol the place with guns and check and see if they were maybe a little darker than they should be. Anyway, so that was the thing. Are you going to go out to dinner? You say it's safe to go out to dinner. Are you going to do it because you've never done it? How do you know I never did it? That's an amazing bent to take on. And then he snaps back into his limited senses and says, sure, why not? I'll go out to dinner. So that was it. It was a dare from a reporter. Not that he didn't get mad about it first. The problem, as they go on with this article, well, pretty much any D.C. restaurant that the president might visit would immediately find itself in a losing situation. In deep blue D.C., there are no shortage of restaurateurs who privately and not so privately would not want to host Trump. Turning the president away, however, would ignite a firestorm of online hate, irate phone calls, Yelp bombing, and death threats. The Red Hen in Lexington, Virginia, became a national pariah when it refused to serve then Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee. Remember that one? Sarah Huckabee Sanders in 2018 during Trump's first term. But that blowback would be nothing compared to spurning Trump himself, particularly since the political temperature is now hotter than a pizza oven. All right, well, sorry. Trump, though, isn't likely to go somewhere he'd be turned away, especially given the advance work required by the Secret Service, as most restaurants would serve him, and most restaurants would serve him because that's just what restaurants do. Still, they would undoubtedly face boycott threats from locals and an onslaught of online and real-life rage. When Trump was reelected, Brooklyn pizzeria Menomale, is that right? I don't know. Menomale. I don't know that pizzeria. Found itself at the center of a neighborhood firestorm simply for congratulating him on his victory. Whatever. It's already been a rough year for D.C. restaurants between increased food and labor costs, thanks Trump, and the economic ripple effects of a diminished federal workforce, thanks Trump. And that was before the federalization of local police and the arrival of National Guard troops. Many D.C. restaurateurs have since reported some of their slowest traffic of the year, not to mention staff who are afraid to show up and work amid increased immigration action. No one wants to become a political target on top of all that. If Trump was to come, I'd be a little anxious because I don't know what that would create or cause, says Martin's Tavern owner Billy Martin, not of the New York Yankees. He's dead. But I'm not going to turn him away either. If he came to Martin's, wow, that's great. He picked Martin's over any other restaurant he could have picked. The 93-year-old Georgetown restaurant has hosted every president from Harry Truman to George W. Bush, although now the Washingtonian magazine has decided to serve me reserve me the same article so that they can up their click count, I guess. That's interesting. Anyway, everybody up through George W. Bush, though, not all while they were serving in the White House. Barack Obama apparently broke that streak. More recently, a number of top Trump administration officials have dined at Martin's Tavern. Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., you may have heard of him, who lives in the neighborhood, has been there a few times. Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel have been there. Treasury Secretary Scott Besant, whatever, just did an interview about no tax on tips at the restaurant. Anyway, when Joe Biden was elected, President Martin was among a number of D.C. restaurateurs who told me he was working on the back channels to try to get a presidential visit. So some people are like really into it, apparently. And then, of course, there's places like the weirdo capital there, Butterworth's on Capitol Hill, which has become the city's single most popular MAGA hangout. And people who are visiting D.C. As MAGA influencers apparently love to make a point of visiting there. Anyway, I think we can jump back out of this at this point. The point was there was a dare that drove him out into the restaurant. And, good point, though. There are definitely restaurateurs who would be reluctant, let's say. By the way, something else that Scott sent to me yesterday, which, in the grand scheme of things, I don't know what to make of this news, but it is oddball news. We'll take a look at it. The Washington Post had the report that Scott sent. Oliver North, do you remember him? He's still alive. By the way, what is this font for the headline? Oh, we're in the style section. Is that it? Or the power subsection of the style section. I didn't even realize they had such a thing. So, unusual headline, and it makes it look like a glam magazine rather than the Washington Post. Oliver North is still alive, and now he has married Fawn Hall. Yes, his secretary during the Iran-Contra scandal. Very interesting. It doesn't get into it in this story because I don't even know if there were rumors at the time. I remember the story, but it was probably whispered about a little bit, like Oliver North, and he's got this secretary in Fawn Hall. Do you remember her? She had, big 80s hair, and she was an attractive young blonde secretary. I think he's in his early 40s at the time. She's in her early 20s. And, the real story behind the story was that she was his secretary, and they were investigating him for, unconstitutional crimes against the United States, etc. And she was smuggling evidence of his crimes out of the office so that it wouldn't be found by investigators. And she was smuggling it out like inside her clothing and, the whole bit. It just sort of added up to, I'm sure there were whispers like, has he got a relationship going on with his secretary? And it didn't, I don't think anything emerged that suggested that they did have a relationship. But I do, wonder now in hindsight, did Oliver North's wife was she ever like, really? This is the secretary you hired? This 20-something-year-old blonde woman? I'm sure she's fully capable. She was fully capable of helping you commit more crimes. That happened to be true. But, classic old pervert weirdo joke from back in the day. They came from a different time, back when everybody was a pervert weirdo, right? You hired a young, attractive, blonde secretary. So what's going on? Well, think about that and then fast forward a little bit. Also, Oliver North weds Fawn Hall. It's been a decent interval, right? His secretary during the Iran-Contra scandal. The subheader reads, the two figures in the 1980 controversy tied the knot last month, according to a Virginia marriage license, which, by the way, the bride was seen smuggling out of the ceremony under her Vera Wang wedding dress. So I don't really know why she felt she had to do that. So here's the story. Roxanne Roberts and Liam Bowman have reported this for the Washington Post in what can only be described as a uniquely Washington love connection, I guess. Oliver North and Fawn Hall, two public faces of the Iran-Contra scandal of the late 1980s, were married last month. And that setup takes at face value that she was merely the secretary even then. But it has been like 40 years, right? So a decent interval has passed. And they both married elsewhere, other people, right? So, not that would have prevented anything, but all right. So it seems like a very credulous presentation of things here. North, now 81, was widowed in November when his wife of 56 years, Betsy, died. Hall, who's now 66, was widowed 20 years ago. That is something. So her husband died very early on in her life. I don't know how old he was. The couple, this new one, was wed on August 27th in Arlington County, Virginia, according to the marriage license obtained by the Washington Post. The couple had reconnected, right? So it wasn't like they were allegedly the case that they were carrying on the whole time. However, there is this, I could see this happening without it having to be totally weird, but it does raise an eyebrow. The couple reconnected at Betsy's funeral, according to journalist Michael Isikoff's Spy Talk, which first reported the story. So, it was nice of her to go to her boss's wife's funeral to express support, but that was where they reconnected. So I don't understand. I do understand that. I don't know. I don't know how the invitations go out for things like that. If they had no contact for 40 years, does she read about it in the paper and go? Yeah, maybe. Anyway, North was the star witness at the Iran-Contra hearings that gripped the nation during President Ronald Reagan's second term, just by way of background. Then a National Security Council staffer at the White House, North was accused of illegally arranging the sale of American weapons to Iran. Yes, for those of you who weren't familiar, to fund a secret war against the communists in Nicaragua. Hall, his young secretary, was the woman behind the boss, shredding documents and even smuggling evidence out of the office under her clothing. The combination of the defiant, straight-arrow former Marine and his stunning blonde aide was catnip for political junkies who hung on every word of the congressional hearings, which were widely televised. Hall was granted immunity. By the way, in 1989, North was convicted of 3 felonies, which were overturned by an appeals court. During the hearings, North emotionally defended his honor and Hall's, saying that he realized that people got the wrong impression, the wrong one. You know that I've got a beautiful secretary, and the good Lord gave her the gift of beauty. And that people snicker that Ollie North might have been doing a little hanky-panky with his secretary, he said. Ollie North has been loyal to his wife since the day he married her. Just saying that the day he buried her, it begins the hanky-panky. I guess credit to him, if that's the case, for holding out, I guess. But you could wait until the week after the funeral, if they just reconnected. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in 40 years. Thank you for coming out in support. In my support, this means a lot to me. And then he waits a week and then he calls her up and says, so how you been? Let's catch up. It could certainly be the case. I found it to be an odd story. By the way, I guess we'll tell you the rest of this background story. In 1987, journalist Michael Kelly invited Hall to be his guest at the White House Correspondents Association dinner. She was, of course, the center of attention, and her appearance supercharged the era of celebrity guests at the formerly low-key event, if you're looking for what the turning point was. 1987, claimed here. Just a few weeks later, Hall testified that she believed in North and the mission, memorably saying that, quote, sometimes you have to go above the written law. If you're looking for another inflection point, it's right there. North went on to a storied career as a speaker, author, and darling of the conservative movement. Not the first, I would gather, but, first of the modern era of this could be treason. But if you play your cards politically, maybe it's actually super patriotism, and all the people who said it was treason are the real traitors, you see. North went on to a storied career as a speaker, etc. In 1994, he made a bid for the United States Senate seat from Virginia to kind of complete the takeover, to transform what was formerly treason into good old American patriotism by co-opting the system. But he lost that election to Chuck Robb, thanks in part to Nancy Reagan, who never forgave North for what she believed was a betrayal of her husband. She may have been wrong about that. The Post's Karen Tumulty writes in her biography of the former First Lady. Very interesting dynamic. North then turned his attention to his foundation, writing, and television. He had a brief run as president of the National Rifle Association in 2018, but left after a year after threatening to expose the organization's alleged financial violations. Maybe in some ways he was a bit of a straight arrow. Hall, on the other hand, disappeared from Washington and politics. She moved to California, married Danny Sugarman, the former manager and biographer of The Doors, in 1993. Wow. Sugarman introduced Hall to crack cocaine. Isn't that nice? And she went into rehab after an overdose the following year. It didn't work out. I'd like to introduce you to crack cocaine. Crack cocaine, this is Fawn Hall, my wife. Oh, I think I'll kill her. Well, very nearly. That's just a weird side note. Despite it all, they stayed together until he died of lung cancer in 2005. So don't smoke crack, kids. It gives you lung cancer, among other things. North married Betsy Stewart in November of 1968. In December of last year, North paid tribute to his late wife on Facebook. We called her Mom. Well, because she was a mother. She was bright, beautiful, bountiful, and brave. This wonderful daughter, sister, wife, devoted mother of 4, grandchildren of 18, great-grandmother to 1, and devout follower of Jesus Christ, is now with our Lord and Savior. He's a very religious guy. Okay. Hall never remarried after the death of Sugarman. Neither North nor Hall responded to requests for comment. Perhaps they're on a honeymoon. We hear Nicaragua is very romantic. Okay, that's a hell of a story. I mean, it doesn't contribute anything to the current political situation, but it does give you some context, I guess, that for the longest time, it's been now, 40 plus years, but really beginning even earlier than that with the immediate aftermath of Nixon and Watergate. That's like the big inflection point, both in terms of trying to remind everybody of the necessity of holding the executive accountable, but also the notion that Republicans could push back on obvious criminality, unconstitutionality, and borderline treason, and instead redefine them as awesome, with, I guess, so far the ultimate example of that being January 6th. But if you were looking for also the inflection point where the White House Correspondents Association dinner became a celebrity gathering of some kind, and, of course, Fawn Hall getting immunity and using that to blurt out. Sometimes you have to go above and beyond the written law. I'm somebody who really knows where the legal line ought to be drawn. Anyway, thanks for the immunity. Now time for me to try some crack cocaine. Immunity well spent. There you go. I don't know. Make of it what you will. I just did. Okay, let's see. Just a few minutes left here and a couple of things to turn to which are important. News from yesterday. I'll just give you a quick rundown of it from the Hill article. The New York Times has covered it as well. But you need to know that a federal judge has, for now, you know how it is with federal judges and the federal judiciary, appeals courts and the Supreme Court. A federal judge has blocked Trump's firing of Lisa Cook from the Fed board. LLE reporting for The Hill lets you know that it has happened. A federal judge late Tuesday temporarily blocked President Trump's attempted ouster of Federal Reserve Board of Governors member Lisa Cook. U.S. District Judge Gia Cobb acknowledged that the firing and Cook's subsequent legal challenges raise many serious questions. Yet the courts have not mulled before. They have in many cases, but I guess there's a new one. But said that at this preliminary stage, Cook made a strong showing that her removal violated the Federal Reserve Act's for cause provision. The judge explained that the best reading of the provision is that the premise of a Fed governor's removal is limited to grounds concerning their behavior in office and whether they have been faithfully and effectively executing their statutory duties. For cause, thus, does not contemplate removing an individual purely for conduct that occurred, say, before they began in office. Cobb wrote in a 49-page ruling. Trump announced Cook's dismissal last month, citing allegations of mortgage fraud raised in a criminal referral from the Federal Housing Finance Agency for cause for her removal. And, of course, we have our doubts about the strength of that evidence and the provenance of that evidence. The move threw into question the Fed's longstanding independence from political influence, though the White House insisted that Trump exercised his lawful authority to remove Cook for cause. You know all about the background of it. There's not much more that we can dig out of this particular piece. And since we're nearing the end of the show, we'll just leave it at that. And we'll see how long that lasts. I had mentioned to you the other day that the Supreme Court has intervened once again and allowed the firing of Federal Trade Commissioner Rebecca Kelly Slaughter. Supreme Court now allowing the firing to go forward on Monday, granting Trump, I guess, his request to uphold the firing of the FTC member. So, I don't know, doing a little bit of long-term damage once again to the for-cause front on that, or the for-cause issue on that front. But I guess there's still some possibility that the Supreme Court will decide they need to stand by their differentiation between everything else and the Fed. But so far, even the FTC falls under the everything else. Plus, of course, some additional Supreme Court tomfoolery, I suppose, that we don't have actual time to get into, but I guess I'll scroll back while the music runs and look for it somewhere. It's buried once again in my blue sky roll, but here we are. The news as reported by Stephen Mazie. Stephen Mazie, SCOTUS correspondent for The Economist, posting, new, the Supreme Court agrees to hear Trump's appeal in the tariff cases on a highly expedited basis. Oral argument will be during the first week of November. And we are reminded by Rick Hazen, professor of law at UCLA, they could have done this, that is, the SCOTUS could have done something like this in the Trump immunity case and given a chance for the special counsel to take Trump's federal election subversion charges to trial. Expediting cases is a choice. Good point. And here, for some strange reason, the SCOTUS says, yeah, we can absolutely hear the president's appeal of his stupid, lawless, baseless tariffs cases immediately, and in some cases skip right over the intermediate appellate courts to do it. But we have to drag things out, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get to this case to figure out whether or not the president has total immunity from everything from birth if he eventually becomes president. Stupid claim like that, well, it could take us a year to take that up. In the meantime, though, let's stay all of the proceedings and make sure that there's no trial. Yeah, that's a choice.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, here's something you don't have a choice about. Staying tuned for Justice Putnam's West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, not just because it comes up next right here on Networks Radio, but because it's essential listening. What's up first? Well, you'll never guess. Yes, will Trump's attorney face sanctions for lying about the Epstein letter? Jeffrey Epstein, and also some Jeffrey Epstein news. Jeffrey Epstein, everyone. See you tomorrow.